Hi, welcome to my workshop. My name is Darren and today I'd like to talk to you about the OF1010 and the OF2200 Festool routers. You may recall a while ago in my videos my puppy Steel made an appearance. Well, he's a little bit bigger now. Here he is. There's the boy. There you go. He's 8 months old now. He's getting quite big. By the way, if you're wondering what these are in my ears, they're just Apple's AirPods. I'm using them for a microphone. I wasn't getting clear enough sound just trying to shout at the iPhone. So, actually I probably should show you my setup here. It's quite funny to see. My tripod is just a piece of wood clamped to the bench with the phone attached to that with what's called a spider pod. And my light is just an LED floodlight pointed right in the corner of my eyes. It's really bright. Anyway, on with the show. So here we are having a closer look at the OF2200. This is, or 2200 if you prefer. This is the first Festool router I bought, and with good reason. It works really well with the Festool track system. You can see it's a big fella. It takes up most of this box, and this is a SIS3 container. If you know your Festool boxes, that's a fairly decent size. So let's take him out and have a look at him. The OF2200 is an all-round excellent router, but I think what sets it apart from the competition is its dust collection. Have a look at this. I'll just set the phone down here on a U-Butte tripod made of a stick. There we go. So if you have a look here around the back of the unit, you can see there's this green button. And what that does, I'll flip it back around. When you press that, watch here, just here where my finger is, the shroud that falls down. And when that shroud's down and you're plunging away, that seals off and keeps all the chips in place. You can see there, it forms a complete seal between the two pieces of acrylic, and that keeps all your chips in place, ready to be sucked away by, let me see if we can get this right in here. I'll just pop the shroud back up. And that clicks into place in case you need access to it. You don't want it in your way, you want to get in there for removing a bit or something. So you can see at the back of the shroud there's this dust intake which runs into upright here, upright, which connects to a standard Festool hose, so you can suck all your dust away. And that does the best job I've ever seen on any router ever. It's amazing. It can be the little things that set one router apart from another. On the top of this particular Festool router you can see there's these little feet, and that's so as when you flip the whole thing upside down to change bits or something like that, it's got something to stand on. It's really good. Check this out. Gotta get the cord out of the way, of course. And there you go. That's actually quite solid there. Obviously you wouldn't route with it like this, but you can see standing there on its motor basically upside down, so as when you want to get in there and change a bit, it's very easy. Another feature of the OF2200 I really like is a quick release base plate. So when you want to fit an accessory such as a router, guide bushing for doing template following work, or in this case a little chip catcher for when you want to do edge work along the edge of your workpiece. This will help increase the dust collection and stop chips from flying everywhere. So what you just lift the thumb piece, that just lifts straight out, and you can put your accessory in, be it the chip catcher or the template following guide bush. There we go. There is a right way and a wrong way to do this. Excuse the back of my head, sorry. Okay, so there we go. So you pop that fella in there. This just clips straight back in. Bang, and we're good to go. There's your guide bush, your template following guide bush in place, good to go. You can use it when you're finished with it. Again, comes off so quickly, it makes it a pleasure. Just bam, and we're back to normal. Now with the OF2200, or for the OF2200, you can buy the router accessory kit. which does contain just about everything you're ever going to need here. So you've got an array of guide bushes of various different sizes, ranging from 17 at the smallest, all the way up to this big fella who's about 40 mil. Okay, so you've got a range of guide plates from 17 up to 40 mil. Great for doing various different template work. You get an array of base plates. Now the different base plates are for different things. This one is when you're going over the edge of your work, you want some extra stability. So you might be working out here on the edge of your piece. You've got a bit of extra weight you can put down as you go, to hold it more securely. You've got this one here, which is used with the guide rail, which I'll show you in a little bit, because it's one of the main reasons I bought this router. This allows for the difference in height for the actual guide rail when you're going along. So this bit will sit on the guide rail, this piece sits on your workpiece, and it stops the router from rocking. And the other two base plates are fairly straightforward. They're different hole sizes for just different jobs. This one's handy, again, if you're doing template following work. Gives you a lot of support, but at the same time, allows all your dust collection up through the base. So good for doing template following work, that one. In all honesty, I've not used this one yet. You can see it's still in pristine condition. Just a bit of dust been taken out of the box is all, unused. Also in the template following, also in the accessory kit, you've got these fellas, and these attach to the base of your router and then clip onto your guide rail to allow you to follow and cut nice straight lines, dados, whatever you want to do with the router. Again, like I say, that's one of the main reasons I bought this one. And we've got this one here, which is your standard fence guide with an adjustable screw here for adjusting the depth of the bit away from the fence. Okay, so that one's better than some of the ones I've had in some of the router kits, but you know, just about all router kits come with one. Now, one of the great things about Festool in general is the way, as a group, their tools form a system. We have the guide rail, which fits not only on the router here, but you can use it with the jigsaw, different routers, the plunge saws. There's an attachment for just about every machine that they make, every cutting machine they make, that will fit nicely on the rail. And the joy of the rail is, of course, that it allows you to cut in nice straight lines. Which, if you're doing dados across a board, say you want to put shelves in a cupboard, and you want to line your nice shelf cuts up in the middle of the board where a normal fence wouldn't allow you, this allows it. Nice and easy. So, again, little touches are what make the Festool so great. One single knob for releasing both of these to allow you to take it on and off. I'll leave it on for now, of course. And if you need to adjust the length away from the fence on this side, you can. But over here, we have the course adjustment. Let's see if I turn that a bit more. Over here, we have the course adjustment for the distance away from the guide rail. And here we have the fine adjustment. So we would loosen that off, and these fellas off, and then adjust this out to roughly where we want it. You can see I've got some movement there. When we've got the router right on the cut we want, we tighten these little fellas, and we tighten that, and we're good to go. If we need to make a fine adjustment, we can loosen the course adjustment, but then just turn this fine adjustment knob here. And what that does, because it's gripping these, it just pushes these poles or rods away from the base unit and gives you the fine adjustment there. Very handy attachment. Again, being part of a system, it uses the same dust extraction as all the other Festool tools. I've got this plugged into an old CF22. You can't get the CF22 anymore. But again, because they've stuck with systems, it doesn't matter. So you'll see here, I'll just take this off. It just plugs ever so easily into the dust extractor and you're good to go. Of course, you won't be seeing this on your freshly bought ones. I pinched this idea off Dave Stanton, off his YouTube channel there. The idea being this is a braided nylon cover, and it keeps both the plug-it cord in place and attached to the hose, but more importantly, it stops it snagging over the edge of the workbench and on things as you move around. It helps it glide, which is really handy because obviously the hoses are ridged like most vacuum hoses, and they tend to go doot-doot-doot-doot and catch on things as you go. Like this, smooth as. Put a little bit of heat shrink over the edge in there just to keep everything in place. Alright, so tech specs on this thing. What have we got? Obviously it's a 2200 watt motor, hence the name. This being an Australian model, it'll be 240 volts 50 hertz AC. In America and other countries, of course, that'll be a different voltage, be that 110, 230, whatever you have there, whatever your local frequency range is. Speeds, we go from 1000 RPM at number 1, all the way up to 2200 at 6 RPM. You can take a bit diameter up to 89 millimeters. Your plunge depth, your coarse plunge depth here is 80 millimeters, and your fine plunge depth is 20. And total weight is 7.8 kilos. Alright, pros and cons. Pros, plenty of power, beautiful to use, wonderful accessories that make it even better to use. You can do more with it. It's probably the most versatile router I've ever owned, and I've owned a lot of routers, and still do, I might say. They're a very versatile tool to have around the workshop. You certainly need more than one. Cons, really only the weight. It's a heavy router, but you've got to accept that if you want that kind of power. So next on the list is the OF1010 router from Festool. Now I bought this router because it's small and light and easy to maneuver, especially if you're doing edging and stuff like that. It's very handy. So this is the fella, this is the router. You can see what we get with it. Obviously the spanner. This one comes with the following guide for the guide rail that I showed you with the 2200. So you can also do nice straight cuts with that. And this little fella, which is your normal edge guide for just following along the edge of straight pieces. And as you saw on the 2200, a little chip collector. Again, for when you're routing around edges, for catching the extra chips, and getting a bit of dust extraction going there. Improve dust extraction. When you're using the guide rail, this doesn't have the offset base like the 2200 has. So instead, you can drop this little fella down. So that stops it from tipping. So you've got your piece of wood and your guide rail that's running on, going a bit higher, but this piece will stop it from tipping as you go. Keeps it nice and level. Down the other side, we've got, again, a 6-speed dial for changing the speeds, but you'll see there's no reference as to what those speeds are on the actual unit itself. You have to look that up in the book, which I'll get to in a little bit. Okay, fairly standard depth adjustment or depth stop adjustment. Again, we have some fine adjustment on this one, like we did with the 2200. You can just see it moving ever so slightly in the window here, 20, 21. So again, we've got the fine adjustment for doing finer work, like you might want to put in a hinge when we get the exact depth for the hinge leaf, that sort of thing. Unlike the 2200, when we put our rods in, these rods here, we have two separate locking screws for them rather than the one central one like the 2200. Dust extraction through this port here. Dust extraction is pretty good. In fact, but for the 2200, I would say it's one of the better dust extractions I've used. This one only takes a 1/4 inch out of it. This is the difference. Of course, the big difference is won't take a 1/2 inch. The 2200 will take both a 1/2, a 1/4, and I believe a European 8mm. router bit. This one just takes a good old-fashioned quarter and possibly the 8mm, but for some reason imperial router bits are really popular in Australia, even though we do everything else in metric. Router bits and some reason bolts are very common in imperial still. Strange. Okay, so fairly nice, light, easy to maneuver router. Great for going along the edges of things. Very easy and light to use one-handed. And again, I've said light a few times, and that's the plus of this router. It is nice and light, easy to maneuver, and easy to use. And the very reason I bought it, as opposed to the 2200, which is heavy, not so good on the edges, or it can be, depending on the use. But if you want fine handheld stuff, if you were doing lettering or something like that, this would be the router to go for. Very nice indeed. So what's the specs on this fella? Let's have a look. So the tech specs for this one are as follows, obviously being the OF1010, it's a 1010 watt motor. Again, an Australian model, so it will run on 240 volts, 50 hertz. This one, that'll vary in other countries. Your quick depth adjustment, we have a total of 55mm plunge, and the fine depth adjustment is a total of 8mm. Our speeds, we can go from 1000 RPM at number 1, all the way up to 2400 RPM at number 6. So it actually spins slightly quicker than the 2200. But a maximum diameter of router bit on this one's only 35mm. And here we go, the weight, 2.7 kilograms. Light as a, well, I've never seen a 2.7 kilogram feather, but as light as one of those. Again, we've got the flat spots on the top of the motor, so while you're changing bits and what have you, it sits nicely on the bench. Takes the standard plug-it cord. Something I forgot to mention about the 2200 is it doesn't take the standard plug-it cord. In Australia, the law requires it to have a solid lead because the motor is over a certain power. I forget what the power limit is, but over a certain power, motors have to have a permanently attached lead here. So we don't get to plug it in Australia on the 2200, but the 1010's smaller, and we do. And I must admit, I really love the plug-it system because I've got it rubbed through the hose already, and it just makes life nice and easy. You connect everything up in one hit, away you go. It's also less to worry about when you're cleaning up. So pros and cons with this machine. I'll mention it again. Pros, the weight. It's lovely. But also it's the little things, the little touches. Like you don't see anything exciting about this plunge bar, for example, but it's easier to use than some other routers. Again, the placement of the power button and the speed, it's all nice and easy to get to. It's just easy to use. The plunge itself, let me just take that out of the way. The plunge itself is so smooth. I've had routers where you plunged a little bit. If you get it off angle, it seems to bind on the uprights, on the plunge bars. But this, no, look at that, smooth as. Same with the 2200, so beautiful and smooth to plunge. Really nice. Now cons, I've only got one con with this router, and that's this port here for the dust extraction. Seriously, why did they make it that shape? Every other tool that they make that uses dust extraction has a nice round fitting, and there's no reason this couldn't have been. It's not like the body interferes with it. There's space there for a round dust extractor. So it means you've got to deform your nozzle every time you want to use it. You've got to squish it out of shape, you've got to squeeze it in, and that gets quite difficult. So sorry Festool, you lose a lot of points for that. Just that, that's the only thing I don't like about this router. And I mean, don't like, it's annoying. Otherwise, it's brilliant. It's one of the nicest little routers I've ever used. In fact, it is the nicest little router I've ever used. Let down by God knows who and why, but there you go. Okay, so I hope that's been of some help to you, especially if you're thinking of buying a router in the near future. I didn't make any cuts and show you them making any cuts. There's no point. There's heaps of videos on the internet that show you that, especially on YouTube. Two I would recommend, people who've done a lot of this sort of thing that you might enjoy. Dave Stanton, another one called the New Grit Workshop with Peter Parfit. Both very good, and both do reviews of the Festool gear. They're good videos, and it's always good to watch a range of different ones. Thanks very much. Great day.